Okay, so welcome to Chai Mitzvah topic webinar number 10, leadership. It's a very important topic for us today when there's so much debate over the leadership in our country and in the world. So let's go to the themes. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, this is not going well here. Oh, I know what to do. Okay. Let's start out with the themes. There. Okay. So Jewish sources are filled with stories about leadership. And many of the narratives about leadership found in the Bible and in rabbinic literature don't generally offer explicit guidance about leadership, but they're filled with values and messages that we can apply to our lives today. And right now there's a need for courageous, moral, and creative leadership. And our tradition can help guide our personal leadership practices, as well as help us select leaders who have the capacity to move us forward. So this session will give your group the opportunity to consider ancient and contemporary thinking about leadership, as well as modern and biblical models of leadership. And as you do so, you'll explore what we value in leadership, as well as what makes the role of leader so complicated. So these are the questions that are going to be answered by the discussions. What makes a leader? Why is leadership fraught with complication? And can leadership qualities be taught, or are they innate? Let's look at the first topic, and let's see. So actually, before we even begin this, one good activity to do with your participants is ask them to brainstorm their top 10 list of leadership qualities, write them down, and then number them, which they think are most important. What they believe is important for a person to be successful in a position of leadership. And then break them up into partners and ask them to compare and rank their qualities in order, beginning with what they believe is the most important and what's the least important. And then explain their selections and ranking to reveal any discrepancies. Then we'll read the text that we're about to focus on, Leadership Competencies, published by the Harvard Business Review, and compare what the participants have listed to those found in the research. What did they leave out? What would they like to add? Were they surprised by the qualities that were selected and didn't appear in this research? Do they want to revise their selections or ranking based on the research? So this research was done by Dr. Sunny Giles, and she compares neuroscience and social science in the development of her theories around leadership. And she explains what contributes to effective leadership. So the first one is demonstrate strong ethics and provides a sense of safety. And so you take these two attributes together, they're all about creating a safe and trusting environment. A leader with high ethical standards conveys a commitment to fairness, instilling confidence that both they and their employees will honor the rules of the game. So they're not going to throw you under the bus. Similarly, when leaders communicate their expectations, they avoid blindsiding people and they ensure that everyone's on the same page. In a safe environment, employees can relax. They can invoke their brain's higher capacity for social engagement and innovation and creativity and ambition. So you've probably found this if you work in a place where you feel like you can make a mistake or you can just give ideas out and you're not going to be punished for it. That's one of the most important things that you can do as a leader. Okay, another one, empowers others to self-organize. So they provide clear direction, but they allow the employees to organize their own time and work. That's the next thing that was found to be really important. I know that I've worked with people who are really frustrated because their boss is micromanaging them. And that's a bad thing to do. No leader can do everything themselves. So it's critical to distribute power throughout the organization and to rely on decision-making from the people who are closest to the action. That's important. Third, really important thing for a leader, fosters a sense of connection and belonging. So this is interesting because it really goes to the neuroscience issues. We're a social species. We want to connect and feel a sense of belonging. So from an evolutionary perspective, attachment's important because it improves our chances of survival in a world full of predators. And this is true in the workplace also. Research suggests that a sense of connection could also impact productivity and emotional well-being. So from a neuroscience perspective, creating connection is a leader's second most important job. Once we feel safe, and that's a sensation that's registered in our reptilian brain, we also have to feel cared for, which activates the limbic brain. And that has to happen in order to unleash the full potential of our higher prefrontal cortex. So it's not just something we feel, it's something you can actually research. The fourth one, shows an openness to new ideas and fosters organizational learning. By the way, all 5 of these we're going to look at again after we look at a couple of leaders. And so as we're going through the texts, kind of keep these in the back of your mind. We're going to look at Moses, we're going to look at Hannah Senesh, we're going to look at Henrietta Szold, then we're going to come back and see whether these things can be seen in the light of what they've done. But I'm talking about number 4, shows openness to new ideas, fosters organizational learning. So tunnel vision can help us focus, but it closes off the rest of us to new ideas and approaches. So to encourage learning among employees, leaders should first ensure that they're open to learning and changing courses themselves. Failure is required for learning, and our relentless pursuit of results can discourage employees from taking chances. So to resolve this conflict, leaders should create a culture that supports risk-taking. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world to make a mistake. It's bad not to learn from your mistake, but you shouldn't be afraid to make a mistake. The 5th one is nurtures growth. So when leaders show a commitment to our growth, employees are motivated to reciprocate, expressing their gratitude or loyalty by going the extra mile. While managing through fear generates stress, that impairs the higher brain function. If you want to inspire the best from your team, advocate for them, support their training and promotion, and go to bat to sponsor their important projects. And you look like you have something to say.
I think this all relates to relationships and trust. And, you know, being a strong leader is relating to having strong relationships with those you work with. So that's what's coming to mind in a congregational setting. How do we encourage our board of trustees to develop relationships with others, to foster a sense of connection and belonging to the congregation, to, you know, the typical members? So that's all coming to mind right now.
That's really a good way of relating it to like your everyday life and to what's important. And I think also, like, I've just heard so many stories throughout the years, and recently, unfortunately, like 3 of them, where people working for Jewish organizations have been treated so badly. And I feel like it's such a terrible comment on us. I have a friend who's an education director who got fired. I mean, I don't even know, they didn't renew her contract for no reason, as far as I can see. And I've heard this so many times. Someone who worked for a Jewish organization who, as she's leaving, they're saying to her, can you help us write a grant so that the person who replaces you can get paid more? Like, who does this? And it's just, it's so many issues like this. I just don't understand how we as Jewish people cannot read our own texts and, you know. So, but to put this on a more individual level, like, do you recognize yourself in some of these competencies? I try to, some of them, you know. And which of these competencies would you like to develop in yourself? I think we have to have them in our mind.
Definitely using this topic as a personal way to relate your leadership, even as a facilitator for this class. How are you conveying that leadership as you're the facilitator, but how can you do it for yourself in other areas?
Right. When I was working on this webinar, I was thinking not only how it relates to my work, my workplace, but also like even my family, you know, because this is just part of life in a way. But,
Right.
you know, we are, as parents, I think, even as children, we are relating to other people in our family, and these things are important. Right. So now there's a lot of text in this. It's a really nicely packed booklet. There's a lot of stuff. So I just want to go over another thing that's good, which is a way to to digest some of the text, because it's some of them are long, but they've got good points in them. So this is called close reading, and there are 5 parts to it. No, 4 parts to it. The IV that I put there confused me. There are 4 parts to it. So the first one is the leader reads the text slowly and out loud. Then the leader rereads the text, asking participants to highlight phrases and words that call out to them as they listen. The next thing, so the participants will divide the text up into sections, titling each section. And then they'll select a portion. It could be a paragraph, several verses, whatever they find in the text that they find particularly significant. It could be an idea they find important, relevant, confusing, upsetting, something that really calls out to them. They should select that and then find a word, just a word in it that's significant to them. Then they divide up into pairs, and they'll share their section divisions and see the similarities and the differences between how they divided it up and what they picked. And then one partner will share his or her chosen section, and the other partner will do the same thing. And they have 2 minutes of uninterrupted share time, and then 5 minutes of conversation. And then they repeat this, so each of them gets to share that way. And then the 4th part is give everyone 3 minutes to reflect on one piece of their conversation that they want to share with the group. And each person will have 2 minutes to share the topic, and then ask the group to name the themes and questions that this text raised. And you can chart the responses for the group to see. This is a way of giving everybody a chance to talk when there's a lot of text and it's hard to break it down. So it's just, like a nice way to do it. And as you can see by the next text, there's a lot there. So I use this technique a little bit. We're looking at Moses as a leader. And so no other character of the Bible is as fully developed as the character of Moses. We watch him rise to leadership, move through the challenges and successes of leadership, and finally we watch him leave his role and his position as a leader. So Rabbi Nathan Lawfer said in his introduction to the book, The Genesis of Leadership, as adults, we learn far better from stories than from abstractions. Human narratives engage us far better than generalities. Stories are a powerful platform for producing personal transformations and communal change. So we're going to read through this narrative of Moses. And as you're doing it, think of your own style of leadership and the leaders who serve as role models to you. And think about what we can learn from Moses about who we are or want to be, both us and what we'd like to see in our leaders today. And how can his experiences inform our own understandings of leadership? So we can't use a close reading in this webinar, obviously, but I did go through and highlight some things. So I focused on Moses' concerns about accepting a leadership role and how God answers his concerns. So the text goes on to describe how God sends Aaron to help and gives Moses his staff to perform signs. And this is what I found, it called out to me. You might find something else. So I'm going to read it. And obviously you'll see when we come to the part that I highlighted, and you can see what you think about it. Moses was keeping the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the farthest end of the wilderness and came to the mountain of God, unto Horeb. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people that are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their pains. I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land unto a good land, and unto the land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanite, the Hittite, and the Amorite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite. Okay, so far, Moses is just listening. Okay, great, thanks. Now, God says, come now, therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. So now Moses just figured out God's going to have him do it. And he says, who am I that I should run unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? So there's a name for that in leadership. I think it's imposter syndrome, right? Moses is like, wait a minute, I'm going to do this? And God said, certainly I will be with you. And that's good. So Moses says, behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and they say unto them, the God of your fathers has sent me unto you, they will say to me, what is his name? What shall I say unto them? And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, thus shalt thou say to the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you. And God said moreover unto Moses, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me unto you. So God's giving him an answer. So would God's responses have helped allay your fears if you were Moses? And which did you find convincing and supportive? Which of God's responses did you find lacking, and why? It's interesting because when I look at it, we have history. We know it went okay for Moses. So we can say, it would have been fine because based on this, I have a little more faith. But if you were approached by your boss to do something really big, I don't know, it might be a little scary.
I think it's scary, but it's also a prime example of not micromanaging, I would have to say. Like, here's the topics. Here's what you need to do. You can say a couple things, but, the rest is yours. Here's the main message. You can say it exactly this way or say what you say. It's okay.
Right. It's good. God did not micromanage. And I think it's good to ask questions. I have a habit of misunderstanding people till I double check. And I think Moses was good to do that. Make sure he got his assignment right. And then we go on. And Moses does get them out, as we know. He sends Aaron. They get out of there. They get into the desert. And then Moses comes upon some other issues. And I did the same thing. I made Moses in yellow and I made God in green. And also, as you might remember, Jethro gives him some good advice, his father-in-law. That's in green as well. So let's see. So Jethro points out to Moses that he can't possibly judge each case individually. Let's read and see what happens here. So all the congregation of the children of Israel journeyed from the wilderness of Sin by their stages, according to the commandment of the Lord, and encamped in Rephidim. And there was no water for the people to drink. Wherefore the people strove with Moses and said, give us water that we may drink. And Moses said unto them, why strive ye with me? Wherefore do ye try the Lord? In other words, don't blame me, blame God. And the people thirsted there for water, and the people murmured against Moses and said, wherefore hast thou brought us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our cattle with thirst? And Moses cried unto the Lord, saying, what shall I do unto this people? They are almost ready to stone me. We were a bunch of fetchers. And the Lord said to Moses, pass on before the people and take with thee of the elders of Israel, and thy rod wherewith thou smotest the river. Take in thy hand and go. And behold, I will stand before thee upon the rock in Horeb. And thou shalt smite the rock, and there shall come water out of it, that people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. Why do you think God sent the elders of Israel to go out there with him? I think it's like a very supportive boss. Like, I'm going to tell the board what a great job you're doing. I also think that maybe the children of Israel were not so 100% behind Moses at the time, and maybe if some other leaders went with him, it was helpful. It's kind of, when you get support from someone else in your political party when you're running for office or that kind of thing.
Well, whenever something's going maybe not the way you want, or when you want to create a new path, you should find your allies. You should find the people who believe in you and who share the same message, so that those allies can spread your idea, your thought.
Right. And I think that was kind of what God was doing here, and then what Moses ended up doing, and it's a good leadership lesson also. Because leaders have to inspire and have to get people to support. But they have to, at the same time, recognize that people aren't going to do it just because he's Moses. They're thirsty. So then we go on. And Moses said to his father-in-law, because the people come unto me to inquire of God when they have a matter. This is what so this is what I was to say. Moses is judging each case of the people. In modern day leadership literature, this model is referred to as distributive leadership, when he stops judging each one individually. Let's look at this and see what happens. So he says, because the people come unto me to inquire of God when they have a matter, it cometh unto me, and I judge between a man and his neighbor, and I make them know the statutes of God and his laws. And Moses' father-in-law said unto him, this is really important, the thing that thou doest is not good. Thou wilt surely wear away both you and this people that is with you, for the thing is too heavy for you. You are not able to perform it by yourself alone. Hearken now unto my voice. I will give thee counsel, and God be with thee. Be thou for the people before God, and bring you the causes unto God. And you will teach them the statutes and the laws, and you will show them the way wherein they must walk, and the work that they must do. Moreover, you shall provide out of all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating unjust gain, and place such over them to be the rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of fifties, and rulers of tens. And let them judge the people at all seasons. It shall be that every great matter they shall bring unto you, but every small matter they will judge themselves. So shall they make it easier for you to bear the burden. So that's distributive leadership. And that came from his father-in-law, which was a good idea. And you might think about, what models of leadership do you observe in your own environment, either in your professional world or in your volunteer work? What do you believe makes for successful leadership?
I also think that every good leader needs a good mentor or a new confidant, a confidant to share, or maybe even a therapist to listen and guide. And every leader can't do it alone. And so Jethro here is that kind of mentor for him, and gives him that advice that Moses was able to go with.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. I agree with you. And some people who are studying this may be more in the mentorship position in their lives, and some studying this might be more in the beginning. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a growth as you proceed along, and I think this was very good advice. So now we've kind of looked at the different parts of leadership exemplified by Moses. Now we're going to look at the role of women. We often, when we're doing biblical narratives, we see a lot about the men, but our tradition also has strong women who served as leaders and partners to the men portrayed in the texts. We have the matriarchs. We have Miriam, Moses' sister. We have Deborah, Ruth, Esther. So a lot of the stories of Jewish history record the contributions of men, but there's a powerful tradition continuing into today of courageous women. Also, in Jewish history, more modern times, there are courageous women, who started the state of Israel and supported that. So the first thing I want to look at is a poem by Rachel Adler, exploring the theme of the lack of women's voices in the recording of the ancient Jewish experience. So this was on the Jewish Women's Archive website. And David Ellison wrote, the writings of Rachel Adler on Jewish law and ritual have catapulted her into the center of modern Jewish religious discourse. And she's unquestionably among the leading constructive Jewish theologians, translators, and liturgists of the modern era, garnering attention from Jewish and non-Jewish scholars, women and men alike. So this text is called "We All Stood Together." And this is as if she were at Sinai. My brother and I were at Sinai. He kept a journal of what he saw, of what he heard, and of what it all meant to him. I wish I had such a record of what happened to me there. It seems like every time I want to write, I can't. I'm always holding a baby, one of my own, or one for a friend, always holding a baby, so my hands are never free to write things down. And then as time passes, the particulars, the hard data of who, what, when, where, why, slip away from me. And all I'm left with is a feeling. But feelings are just sounds, the vowel barking of a mute. My brother is so sure of what he heard. After all, he's got a record of it, consonant after consonant after consonant. So, what part of this poem resonates with your experience?
Well, specifically, I've been sharing. I have a coworker who just had a baby, and just like my baby's now 16 years old, but just the memory of the loss of a limb when you have a child and the difficulty of doing anything, let alone writing things down. But what really resonates with me is the power of words or journaling, not just the feelings, but uh, the activity that you have done. I'm in the process. Every once in a while, I put myself through a process of logging my tasks, just for myself, of like, wow, I had 25 hours of meetings in the last week, or I spent, 7 hours just going through emails. And seeing what I have journaled is very powerful for my, in this case, for my leadership and for understanding where I'm heading. I think that's what really spoke to me.
That's really, really important. It's interesting because, I mean, I'm sure that what the brother wrote down was also through his perspective. It doesn't mean that's what really happened. It means that's what he thought happened. And he can remember what he thought because he wrote it down, but it was still subjective. And she's questioning her memory. It's funny because when I think back from when my kids were little, I saw everything through watching them. So I remember doing a task, but at the same time wondering if I needed to change a diaper or whether someone was going to fall down the stairs or, whatever was going on. And I'm at the point of my life now where my kids are having kids. So I'm watching, and I watched my older daughter completely transform. Her son's 2.5. I watched her go from a very competent professional, she's a professor, to a very competent professional with a slightly different twist. Like, I'm not going to give everybody long papers because I'm going to have to correct them, and a perspective like, yeah, this is really important, but I've got to plan Henry's birthday party. So there's like, you see the world definitely differently. And so it's interesting. I think as women, we are maybe even more powerful leaders because, and maybe now that men share the household duties more, I feel like there's a whole perspective that you see when your job is not the only and most important thing in your life. So that's kind of what I take away from this as well. One of the discussion questions, do you think the issues raised in this poem continue to be present in the lives of women today? And I think that's pretty much true.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one is one of my favorite leaders, Hannah Senesh. She was born in Budapest in 1921, and she died in 1944. You probably know a lot about her, but I'm going to tell you anyway because I love her. She's known probably most for her death. After immigrating to British Mandate Palestine in 1939, Hannah Senesh joined the British Army in pre-state Israel in 1943 at the age of 22 in order to help save the Jewish people suffering at the hands of the Nazis in Europe. She was captured and executed by the Gestapo. So one thing I know from her diary is it was very personal for her. She joined the army because her mother was in Hungary and she wanted to save her mom. And they got caught together and they were in the same prison. And they could see each other across the courtyard. And one of the things that I read was that she left her mom a note saying, "I'm sorry," when they executed her. And it's just very powerful to me. But she kept a diary that tells a story. She was idealistic and she was courageous. And she's a great role model. So I'm going to read the text, her thing, and then we can look at the questions. I don't know whether I've already mentioned that I've become a Zionist. This word stands for a tremendous number of things. And she's going to tell, as she tells what they mean to her, think about how come she became a leader. And I think you'll see why. To me, it means, in short, that I am now consciously and strongly feel I am a Jew and proud of it. My primary aim is to go to Palestine or work for it. Of course, this did not develop from one day to the next. It was a somewhat gradual development. There was a first talk of it about 3 years ago, and at that time I vehemently attacked the Zionist movement. Since then, people, events, times have all brought me closer to the idea. And I'm immeasurably happy that I've found this ideal, that now I feel firm ground under my feet and can see a definite goal towards which is really worth striving. I'm going to start learning Hebrew, and I'll attend one of the youth groups. In short, I'm really going to knuckle down properly. I've become a different person, and it's a very good feeling. This is the part she writes. One needs something to believe in, something for which one can have wholehearted enthusiasm. One needs to feel that one's life has meaning, that one is needed in this world. Zionism fulfills all this for me. One hears a good many arguments against the movement, but this doesn't matter. I believe in it, and that's the important thing. I'm convinced that Zionism is Jewry's solution to its problems, and that the outstanding work being done in Palestine is not in vain. So the conversation shaped by this text is pretty important to Jewish leaders today, I think. And so let's look at it. What characteristics and qualities would you use to describe Hannah Senesh based on this diary excerpt?
I think what came to mind loud and clear was her conviction. And when you have a leader who knows what they want, what they need, where they're going, it's very powerful.
I think so too. And it's interesting, we have a virtual Musar group that meets. And one of the women there just rose to a leadership position in her sisterhood. And it was interesting because she was saying, and I see this in Hannah Senesh also, it's not about her. It's about what she's working towards. And I think that's a very important quality.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
How does the tone of Hannah Senesh's diary entry compare to that of Moses' opening conversation with God? And what do you think contributes to this difference? I think she seems a lot more committed and confident. That's how I see it. Now, one difference is that Moses was a mature man and Hannah Senesh was very young. I think when you're very young, you don't know what's going to happen. You're completely optimistic and you just go at it. I think that's why so many young people are idealistic and so many older people are more cautious.
Agreed.
Yeah. How do you think age, well, I did talk about that. Many Jewish women have taken roles of leadership in important movements fighting for social justice. For example, Lily Montague and Rose Schneiderman fought for women's suffrage. Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem are among the most famous names associated with the feminist movement. What do you think about Jewish tradition contributes to this pull to stand up in the face of social inequities? I see two things. First of all, I think the Jewish religion encourages questioning and thinking.
True.
We also are not a religion where we need to go to someone as an intermediate between us and God. We all have this relationship with God. So we're all pretty, we're from the beginning, we're told that we are, all even. There's nobody who's got to intervene for us. So nobody's above us really in a spiritual capacity. And I think that although certainly long ago, just like everywhere, women were not equal to men, it is true that so we have a ketubah that a woman had to sign it to show that she was consenting to marry. Now, certainly they were trading some cattle for her. She wasn't equal to the husband, but she could, at least they were saying, we want to know what you think about this as well. So even from the beginning, I think Judaism's been a little bit ahead in the thought.
I can see that.
Yeah, that's what I see too. And now we have, obviously there are a lot of different strains of Judaism, and people might look at ultra-Orthodox and say the women there aren't equal. But what I say about that is we have choices now. And actually, I think women who choose that, they've chosen it, and they see their roles being a different realm than the man, but not inferior to it. That's what I've seen. So that's my take on it. Now, Henrietta Szold, another one of my favorites. This is a picture of her on Israeli Money. And this is Henrietta Zold's report in Hadassah magazine. So it's a long text. It's full of thought-provoking information. So I'm going to read it. And if you're doing this with a group, you might ask them to give a title or a caption to each section. What is Zold doing within each section? And so interesting, I was reading this earlier today and my daughter was texting me and I texted her back this very, very thoughtful, very formal message. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm reading Henrietta Szold. So as you listen to it, think of her, she's talking to the women of Hadassah a long time ago. Okay, and knowing the history of Hadassah, where they started and what they've accomplished in Israel and in the world. Let's see what she has to say to them. She says, "It is a matter of 5 years since I have stood face to face with you, and I return to you today to be enfolded in the arms of affection. I am more moved than I can say. And what do I see? I remember nearly a quarter of a century ago, a band of women, a small band, assembled in the vestry rooms of one of our synagogues. They were the founders of Hadassah, not I. And when they gathered unto themselves, women after women, and those women labored, as has been said, like bees, not only all the daylight hours, but far into the night, they were the builders of Hadassah. And I like to think that in Hadassah, the individual disappears. What we were talking about with Hannah Senesh also, or with leaders, the individual disappears. The individual is not known. It's the people who will not brook indignity and humiliation, but will insist upon asserting themselves and upon building a future no matter what may have been done to destroy their present. My friends, I come to you not only from Palestine, where I have spent 15 years. I come to you also from Germany, from Austria, from Holland. I come to you from Germany. That land has not been able anymore to find a place for Emanuel List, for Heinz Lippmann, for Albert Einstein. I come to you from Austria, where our people are sitting upon a volcano that is already rumbling. And I come to you from Little Holland that has acted gallantly, that has received refugees upon refugees, and has enabled us there to prepare our youth for Palestine and for other countries in an outstanding way. And I come to you here, and I find you are consciously or unconsciously, certainly energetically, doing great work towards rescuing the Jews, our people. I'm amazed. I'm struck with wonder that you should have had the courage to take up, in addition to your unfinished task in Palestine, the medical work, that has lost neither its claim upon you nor the need for its existence and continuation, that you should have added a great new task. You've heard how great that task is. The first group of the youth Aliyah has come to Palestine, went to Ein Harod in the Emek. That group is about to complete the 2-year period. They will stand on their own feet. They will have received 2 years of instruction in practical work, on the farm, in the stables, and the workshops. They will receive 2 years of instruction in the Hebrew language and adjustment to the conditions of their new home through the study of Jewish history, Jewish literature, and the geography of Palestine. So think about that. And the Hadassah women were bringing refugee kids and training them and in 2 years, these kids were going to go out and become citizens of Israel. Altogether, our undertaking in Palestine has been unprecedented. We've made mistakes, but we have achieved. We did not know. We were inexperienced. We have gained experience. We have done much, but there is still much to be done. Our educational system is not perfect. We cannot teach trades, for instance, as we should teach them to those young boys and girls, notice she says girls, going into the country. We must remedy that. We have raised the structures on deep, solid foundations. And now Hadassah, which is taking care of the health of a whole generation, I want to say, even if it be only parenthetical, their undertaking was great and noble. And you've done a piece of work that may never be forgotten, that saved the lives of many of the immigrants. A piece of work that must go on. You must take upon your shoulders this double task. Hadassah has now entered upon the fundamental work of Zionist colonization, the furnishing of immigrant preparation abroad, preparation with the land and settlement of the land. I congratulate Hadassah. So this was written in 1936, and we all know what came after that. What would motivate you to follow her lead if you were listening to this and you were a Hadassah woman?
Well, I think there's a sense of shared leadership here. She's just not the only leader. She's asking all of us to take a leadership role. I also feel that there's a sense of community. You're not alone. So there are many people. If you do this, if you help us, if you work towards this, you have a group of people who are doing it with you. You have a new family. You have a new community.
Right. And notice that she said we've made mistakes, but we've learned. Which to me means, okay, I might make a mistake, but they're not gonna chastise me. They'll be there. And so, how much of your response to these questions is a result of her style, and how much is related to the content of her words? That's important too. Although I think that because this is from 1936, the style might not resonate with us, but certainly we understand what she says, and I think that it's very important. So let's look at the leadership competencies and see how what we've read from Hannah Senesh and from Henrietta Szold and from Moses, how they relate to these. So demonstrates strong ethics. It provides a sense of safety. So in what way do the women embody these attributes? I think Hannah Senesh she's strongly ethical, believes in Zionism. I think Henrietta Szold provided a sense of safety when she said we've made mistakes. But like you said, we're a community and we're learning and we're going to accomplish this task.
Even with Moses, it's like you're not alone. We're going to do this together and we're going to succeed together or fail together. And,
right.
Definitely.
Yeah. Empowering others to self-organize. For sure, Moses did that. And I think Henrietta Szold did that as well. I don't think we really had that in Hannah Senesh's diary. That's just not a part of what she was doing. But fosters a sense of connection and belonging. Certainly, Hannah Senesh was becoming part of the Zionist movement. Henrietta Szold, the way she talked about Hadassah, for sure. And shows openness to new ideas and fosters organizational learning. Well, I think that Henrietta Szold certainly was open to new ideas. And as far as nurturing growth, I think all of the leaders did.
Mm-hmm. I see that.
Yeah, I do too. So then we take this to a personal level. As you know, Chai Mitzvah participants have a special learning, social action, and a commitment to deepen or adopt a spiritual practice. So on the back of every booklet, I don't know, did they have this when you first did Chai Mitzvah?
Yes.
We added the questions on the back, so we can look at the questions and see how they relate to the topic. So who or what inspired you in your social action choice? And whom do you hope to inspire by your example? So you're talking about either a leader or just something that inspired you, and then how you are becoming a leader. You're going to inspire other people. And I think also it's interesting because it kind of shows that leadership is to inspire. It's inspirational. It's funny because we sail, we live on a sailboat. And when our kids were younger, we didn't live in a sailboat, but we all sailed. And we sent our youngest daughter for sailing school for a summer. And they taught it in a way that's so different from what I remember being young. She came back and said, the captain enables the crew to do their job. And I thought, that's great, That's not how I heard it, but that's how I think it should be in leadership. So,
good summary.
Yeah, that was good. So we've been talking the whole time, but certainly if you have anything you want to ask, this is the time. All right, well, thank you very much for joining me. This was great. I'm looking forward to you becoming part of our Chai Mitzvah family again. And I will send you the other stuff we talked about, and thanks.
Thank you, Nina. Have a great week.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.